It was supposed to be the proudest day of his life. The flags rippled in the salty breeze. The brass band played its triumphant notes, and rows of young men stood tall in their freshly pressed uniforms, the elite few who had survived the impossible. The Navy SEAL graduation was no ordinary ceremony. It was the culmination of sweat, blood, broken bones, sleepless nights, and the kind of grit most people couldn't imagine. Families crowded the stands, their cheers mixing with the crash of the waves behind the naval base. But what happened that afternoon silenced everything. The music, the applause, even the wind, as a single tattoo brought the entire ceremony to a halt. The recruits had lined up for the traditional inspection, where the commander would walk past each graduate, pausing, observing, and shaking hands. It was symbolic, a final recognition of brotherhood and honor before these men stepped into the most dangerous job in the world. But in the audience, one mother stood out. She wasn't cheering wildly like the others. She stood quietly, her hands folded, her eyes locked on her son. There was something steady, almost unshakable in her presence. As the commander moved down the line, he paused near the young man whose mother stood at the front row. He studied the boy's stance, firm, proud, and unyielding. But then his gaze drifted, almost instinctively, to the woman in the crowd. And that was when the entire atmosphere shifted. She had moved slightly, adjusting the sleeve of her blouse as the heat bore down, and as she did, her forearm was revealed. A tattoo, faded but still bold, inked deep into her skin. It wasn't just any design. It was a trident. A Navy SEAL trident. The commander froze mid-step, his eyes locked on it, his jaw tight. The graduates in line, the families in the crowd, everyone noticed the sudden pause. The silence spread quickly. The band stopped playing, the chatter faded, and all that remained was the sound of the gulls circling overhead. The commander slowly turned, breaking protocol, and stepped toward the front row where the woman stood. Her son stiffened in confusion, unsure of what was happening. The commander's boots echoed across the deck until he stood directly in front of her. "That tattoo," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Where did you get it?" The woman met his gaze, unflinching. She didn't look away, didn't shrink back under the weight of hundreds of eyes. Instead, she lifted her chin, rolled her sleeve up higher, and showed the full mark. "I earned it," she said softly, but firmly. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mothers? Wives? Sisters? Maybe. But Navy SEALs? That was unheard of. For most, the very idea seemed impossible. And yet here she was, standing as proof, her past etched permanently into her skin. The commander's expression softened, almost reverent. He knew what it meant to carry that trident. He knew the nights of bone-breaking exhaustion, the drown-proofing drills, the endless miles with packs so heavy they cut into your shoulders. He knew the cold of the surf, the sand grinding into raw skin, the voices screaming at you to quit, to give up. Very few made it through. And here was a woman, this quiet mother in the stands, who had borne it all long before her son stood on that platform. He turned back to the graduates. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice booming, "do you know what you're looking at? You see before you, not just family, not just a mother, but a warrior. This woman was a SEAL before most of you were even born." Gasps filled the stands. The young man standing in line blinked, stunned, realizing perhaps for the first time just how much of her past she had kept from him. The commander raised his hand to her, a salute that broke every formality of the day. "It is not tradition to salute in this moment," he said, "but today tradition bows to respect." Slowly, every graduate followed his lead. One by one, the young men who had fought their way to the stage lifted their hands in salute, not to their commander, not to their own achievement, but to the woman who had done it all long before them. Tears welled in the eyes of the crowd, though the woman herself did not falter. She nodded once, humbly, and lowered her sleeve again as though she had shown nothing at all. After the ceremony ended, her son rushed to her. His voice shook. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" She smiled faintly. "Because it was never about me. It was about you finding your own strength. You didn't need my shadow. You needed your own fire." He stood there, torn between awe and disbelief. All those years he had thought of her as just his mother, the one who packed lunches, worked long shifts, and offered quiet words of encouragement. He had never guessed that behind that calm exterior was someone who had faced the impossible and conquered it. The story spread across the base, then across the country, whispered from one sailor to the next, until it became a legend. The day the graduation stopped, the day the commander saluted a mother, the day a hidden past rose to the surface to remind everyone that heroes don't always wear uniforms in the present. Sometimes they sit quietly in the stands, their sacrifices hidden in silence, waiting for a moment to remind the world of what true strength looks like. And though the band resumed, and the speeches went on, no one there ever forgot the pause, the tattoo, and the salute that turned an ordinary graduation into a story that would be told for generations. Because in that moment, every person understood, strength isn't bound by gender, age, or role. It's written in scars, in silence, and in ink that doesn't fade, no matter how many years pass. That day, a son didn't just graduate as a SEAL. He discovered he was walking in the footsteps of one